All right. Hopefully, do a little sound test as always, just to make sure everybody can hear me. Get started in a couple minutes. Hey Jake, hey Laura, good to see you guys. Thanks for coming out. Josh, thanks for coming out. Today we'll talk a little bit about ideas, which seems to be plaguing all of us. Sleeping dumplings. I always think it's funny that I gotta call someone by Sleeping Dumplings or whatever their handle is. You got Josh Lewis, pretty sure that's his name, he didn't just make that up. And Sleeping Dumpling. That's Mr. or Mrs. or, well, I don't know what the pronoun is for that proper. Well, alright, it's 11 o'clock. Skillizard, thanks for showing up finally. Appreciate it. Alright, so I'm going to talk and draw, but I think we're going to talk mostly about just different ways of coming up with ideas. Because there's one thing that looking at this blank white screen does to most artists is it just causes them to kind of freeze up and self-doubt and get frustrated. And I think there are just endless tools and tricks that you can kind of use to get yourself into a spot where you're able to start generating something and hopefully generating something worthy of making. But sometimes that doesn't even matter. So I think we're going to talk through a few different things that I use for coming up with ideas. Now, there's a difference between whether you're doing something commercial. Hey Nick, hey Philippe. Meaning if you have a client, then you probably have a brief, probably have some criteria that you're trying to meet. You know, if you work at a company as a character designer or any kind of creative, often there's some sort of brief, there's some sort of design spec that you have to meet. So those are going to be really important for coming up with your idea. Hey Alex. But how do you approach things in a unique way? How do you offer up possibilities for those, to answer those design specs, to answer those briefs that haven't been done too often before, if at all? And that's that can be tricky. So the first thing that I think I like to go to, it's sort of the obvious one, is reference. And reference is kind of an easy one. It doesn't require anything from yourself as an artist necessarily right away. It's there to kind of like spur on those ideas. So for instance, I use Pinterest incessantly. And I don't know if you guys have your own Pinterest channels or whatever the heck they call them, accounts. But I highly recommend it because whereas I think it was designed for like wedding planning and vacation planning and stuff like that, it's just chock full of some of the best reference, anywhere from cars and motorcycles to machinery to really cool nature stuff to other people's concepts, and I just fill things, and I use every single time I start a project that I consider bigger than just a single piece, I'll start a new tab. Oh, I think I even have it up. So like I was just thinking about for the live stream, how how we're gonna probably start looking at like ways to like mash things up, and I was just finding like these really cool various things, bugs and skeletons, motorcycles. I really like looking at ceramics because I think people in ceramic field are exploring some really beautiful forms. So the first one that kind of called out to me was this plant, which I'm going to put on my page here. This was this cactus bud that was opening up. And then the other one was this buck. I really like this buck. I think he's got this like nice crazy look. Look at his lips. I don't know, something about it. So oftentimes our best opportunities come from just grabbing a couple of images that are kind of disparate. And oh good, I'm glad some people are already using Pinterest. Thank you very much, Laura. So I'm just gonna kind of make myself, I have a habit of trying to keep my reference nice and neat. If it's chaotic, then I start to feel like I'm making a mess. So these are two disparate things. I think what they have in common is that they're both already organic shapes. And I think anybody who's seen a lot of, monster movies, and I'm sure the person from Stranger Things saw a plant like this, or, whatever. Hey Casper, how you doing, man? So I'm looking at that shape, and I think I'm just going to illustrate quickly what I think happens a lot in coming up with ideas, and I think it causes people to kind of fall short a little bit. So I'm not going to take this drawing very far, but I do want to kind of like show what I think happens. Like, so you pick these two images. Yeah, I've lost entire work days to Pinterest sleeping dumplings. I just I get sucked in. All right, so let's say we're looking at like a deer, a buck or something like that, some sort of buck, and we start sketching out our forms, and we're like, oh, okay, so, and then I'm gonna stick that plant head right on the body, and we're good, right? We're good to go. Like, we already have a monster, right? Like, that's pretty great. And you can start changing in those fibers for teeth, and that's a pretty compelling monster. And I think we're getting to a point where we're sticking something on a creature or a robot or anything's just head, just putting a kind of like a mask on, it's maybe like a little too easy, and maybe I think you're selling yourself short when you kind of go that route for an idea. So maybe a different way to approach the same general concept is to look at how this cactus is kind of splitting apart in different ways that we could explore where we could put that. So maybe if we look at that deer, one opportunity that I'm just seeing now is, like we have, I'm not going to draw a straight up deer, obviously, but let's say we get that kind of general shape going with the muzzle, but then instead of these horns, that's where we split that right down the middle all the way to the nose, and maybe right in the center here is like a little flap of it. Center line it. So as we start to incorporate it into the body, maybe maybe more of these fins kind of come down. And we keep that split going as we kind of compress our details right down the center there. So if we have, let's say, some teeth that we're kind of replacing those kind of fibers with, kind of make it look spooky. Those can overlap here, and they can make their way down on the bridge of this nose. I mean, I'm already kind of in love with this idea, which I shouldn't be. It's a little too early, but I think I might sketch on this for a little bit. Carry those plant forms down. So already, you know, we're thinking about like forest creatures and forest spirits and things like that. And you can imagine, you know, like sort of embers and things like that kind of coming out, like, you know, little particles of glow coming out of this really spooky mouth. I always like the idea of something kind of like noble and angelic, but also having like this really creepy quality to it. Like, you really, even though it's absolutely beautiful, you have to kind of still be a little bit wary of it. Yeah, so we might sketch on that a little bit more. Another option, shrink that down, put that over there. We'll work on that in a minute. Another option I'm thinking about is maybe we've got this kind of steed buck thing going on. I don't know what the legs are gonna look like quite yet, but I'll just go with standard buck for now. Some muscles back there, and we can literally split the whole animal, you know, using the same kind of thing. So maybe you can start to see some of the skeletal structure underneath, and I don't know what will we do for the head. We'll probably do some plant-based horn type thing. So corkscrew that out. And that negative shape in there, you know, I'll accentuate it a little bit. Just play with some of these forms. Maybe it's got little blossoms or something growing off these horns. And we can do kind of this pocked multi-eye thing here. It's kind of a lazy way of dealing with a face by not drawing one, just sticking eyes all over a smooth form, but yeah. And I think, you know, you probably open this up a little bit more even, just to kind of really sell it. I like username. I think that's like the best handle I've seen so far. You guys are liking other things besides Pinterest, huh? You're gonna make me join yet another thing? Getting to that point where I'm just stuck in my ways. I don't want to keep joining things. be as like a main of kind of flora stuff. Shrink that down. Maybe we'll draw on both of these for a little bit. So just by, I guess the point I'm trying to make with this, as far as like ways to approach a different outcome, is can you, hey, thanks Juki Concepts, I appreciate it. Can you find ways to use reference like this in unique ways? Can, one of the things that I'm really fascinated by, I used to do an awful lot of sculpting in college, and my professor was always talking about the hierarchy of people, how far out their nose is. Sometimes their lips are, keep falling down past their chin. Sometimes they protrude out where their eyes are set in, and you're always looking at the hierarchy. And I kind of stopped there for a long time. Like the thing about people's hierarchy, animals' proportions is the sort of, if they're big and strong, or they're kind of feeble or limber or whatever body type that they have, it carries all the way through their form. So if someone has bow legs, there's a good chance like their ribs have some kind of, similar arcs to them. Their spine has similar arcs, their face, their neck, the way everything gets carried. There's forms that kind of carry all the way through versus someone who's got like really straight proportions. So by just sticking things on the head, you kind of are missing an opportunity to carry some of these mashed out forms all the way through the form and really find a way to do something a bit more unique. So just because I think it'd be fun, I'm gonna sketch on these a little bit, and in the meantime I'll talk a little bit about other options. So we'll put this deer guy over here. Good place for him. I don't know what's gonna happen with this thing. All right. So let's keep going with this guy. I really like it. So yeah, reference is definitely one way to kind of get the ball rolling. I hesitate to say that looking at other people's concepts is a good idea. It can be pretty demoralizing, honestly. And you certainly don't want to find yourself taking other people's hard work and using them for yourself. I think that's a given. So to overdo it by looking at other people's work, I think you can find yourself in some pretty tricky areas. But if there's a competitive quality to you, looking at other people's work, if you feel like you're holding yourself to a standard, and that standard is being as good as every other artist out there in some fashion, I think it can be, I don't want to call that healthy, but that is motivating. When you don't want to be left behind and you want to be able to be competitive. But that's not the reason we all do this stuff all the time. Sometimes you're looking for a little kick in the tail. So, and the thing is, there's no reason why you couldn't just work directly from reference. You find a photo and you want to just, work on that directly and just find ways to exaggerate it or what have you. That can work, but I don't think that you're exploring things in a completely unique way doing that. But that may not actually be the goal. You know, a lot of concept art isn't necessarily about coming up with something, you know, crazy all the time. Sometimes it very much is about finding something that, you know, looks believable or is believable, and sometimes, you know, having your way with some like reference can be just the ticket. You know what this guy needs? He needs ears. He needs some sort of ear. Hey, Dima. Thanks. Yeah, so I'm talking a lot about this reference over here. So different ways to mash it up, and the point I was trying to make was not to just jam the thing on, you know, so one thing on the head of another thing. I always find different ways to mash those things up. And then just because I want to draw, I'm going to take it a little further. Hopefully that's okay. So I'm going to do these branch things. But the mashup thing doesn't have to just come from reference. You know, the reference provides concrete things for you to look at, and I think that is always a safe bet. But doing a mashup can also be a mental exercise. An example that I always give is if you want to draw an elephant and you really want to make an elephant compelling, you know, do something to oppose that scale. Do something to oppose just the sheer size and mass of their character. You know, is there something that you can add to a character like an elephant or a rhinoceros that makes that size feel even more important? And, you know, as an example, again, this is an example that I use a lot, but if you made an elephant into a watchmaker, you put him at this tiny little desk, these tiny little tools, these gigantic feet. I don't know if they're called paws. I don't think elephants have paws. And they're just, you know, just that contrast, that shape contrast, that story contrast. All of a sudden the elephant's bigger. He's not physically bigger, but he's bigger to the task. And that contrast, that mashup of those two things suddenly makes the size of the elephant feel important. It's so much more impactful than had you just developed a character that was just an elephant and maybe it was a construction worker or something that I think you could probably imagine that something with that kind of size could handle. So finding ways to oppose things. You know, if you had one of these forest creatures and you wanted something to feel silly, you know, like you see a deer and the deer has these really elegant feet, and you can imagine that it can walk through the woods making just the slightest noises so it stays out of earshot of prey. Well, what if it had giant clunky feet, like just gigantic feet? That's hilarious. Or wore sneakers, or you know, just had dangly, you know, decorations all over it or something like that. Those oppositions start to tell this story about like what it means to be a deer, what it means to be this sort of like elegant forest creature, but what they've kind of given up and caused this contrast. You know, I think those kinds of exercises can start to bring some new ideas to the table. All right, so Josh's, the contrast. I think it doesn't, you know, it doesn't hurt to just keep pushing ideas using opposition. I think that's going to be a really good first try. You know, and I'm not going to say any of these are going to land you perfectly every single time, but it's about having more tools in the box, you know. Do you also have a 3D background? I noticed the way you paint is similar to 3D rendering passes. Nope. Oh, a 3D background, like, I see what you mean. I thought you meant like in my file. Yeah, I do a lot of 3D modeling. I've been doing 3D modeling for a long, long time, longer than I've been a concept artist. When I worked at Insomniac, I was a modeler as well. I modeled a lot of the Ratchet and Clank characters, main characters, for a long time. Yeah, do a lot of modeling. And I think what came from that is a lot that I do in my rendering, because the modelers would really need to understand how forms work, how surfacing worked, and I was very in tune with what would and wouldn't work for them as far as a process goes. So when I started working on my rendering techniques, I was really, really tuned into what a 3D artist needed. And that was really helpful. You know, I love modeling. I love concept work, and I think it's nice to have a little bit of versatility. But I think what was more important was I liked being able to kind of step away from one and go to the other, and then step back to the other one, so there wasn't as much fatigue going on. I think anytime you can have my brain is telling me to say talents, but other tools in your if you have other more versatile techniques, other mediums that you can work in, then I think that you can kind of like get to a hard part in one of those mediums, and then you can go to another medium and explore and try things out. Just freshen up. Just mentally, sometimes you need to freshen up. Kind of get away from it all. So I'm kind of pinching these eyes here because I wanted to kind of like emulate some of those leaf patterns. You know, like, or wood grain, you know, like maybe that's what we need to work in here, is like some of that like wood pattern. Continue some of this down. Yeah, well, I don't, you know, I love painting that in that style. That's sort of my go-to. So I really enjoy it, but I do also get bored of that as well. I like doing graphic work from time to time, you know, whenever I can. So, you know, it's, I don't know. I'm probably sitting amongst good company right now. You just kind of want to, after you kind of start getting to a comfortable spot with something, it's time to start breaking away from it and exploring different techniques. And so, you know, if you're just rendering one way for a really long time, all of a sudden you're just like, what else is out there? What else can I do with pieces? What am I missing? And the more you kind of go out and explore, and when I say go out, you're sitting at home, but whatever. It's kind of funny. You know, I think you bring things back to the other techniques. You know, you might learn something about shading that you didn't know from the graphic stuff that you bring back. You know, like harder shadow shapes that you might have been getting just a little bit too soft with your shadows or something like that. You know, it's always good to try out different techniques. I think people are afraid that if they try out a different technique, they're going to be leaving their style. And that's just not true. You don't lose your style. I could show you life drawings, sculptures. I could show you models. I could show you quick sketches, long paintings. You know, it always looks like, you know, to my dismay, it always looks like I did it. People say it all the time. I think I'll look at a piece that I'm working on and I'll think, I'm finally getting away from tired old me. And someone will come up and be like, I knew that was yours the second I saw it. I was like, oh, screw. But, you know, that's a good thing as well. I'm going to put some berries on this guy. So this is the part that I thought was kind of fun about this guy. I want to put like a rib cage inside of him. kind of really seeing. Let's see, so his clavicle or scapula would show up maybe about like that. I'm not going to carry the ribs too high. But yeah, I think last week someone asked me if it was important to do 3D as a concept art for video games, and it's not. It's not. It's kind of like, and I apologize. I can really screw up analogies, but it's that kind of like training to push yourself into different realms and to get yourself into uncomfortable positions and learning new things. That's like a self-guided challenge. What are you getting out of that? It's not necessarily like your employer is like, oh, you have to do this. You have to learn how to 3D model. Otherwise, you're not going to have a job here anymore. That's not it. It's something, what do you want? What do you want to be able to do? Do you want to have access to that knowledge in a way that's meaningful? To understand, I found it valuable because when I was working with the modelers, I really wanted to make sure that I was providing them with the most accurate work. And so it really made a really big impact on me when I would create something that I knew that it was gonna work in 3D. And when I handed it to a modeler, I didn't have to feel like I had just handed them some sort of like Sudoku puzzle that they were gonna spend the next month of their life trying to figure out and cursing at me for not thinking it all the way through. That meant something to me. And that's not always the case. That doesn't necessarily need to be done, but that was important for me. So staying with 3D and really learning it, year after year. Unfortunately, with 3D, it's like drawing. They just keep evolving. So you're just never completely up to snuff. Yeah, actually, like, I'm answering the next question here. Actually, Dima first. I'm sorry you answered already to a similar question, but what is your document size? Because your brushstroke looks tiny and fine. So this canvas is, I just kind of opened up a canvas randomly. So this is very arbitrarily 6429 by 5000 at 400. And I'll say this right now, I say it all the time, the resolution does not matter. All you care about is the pixel res. If you have 6,429 pixels in one dimension and 5,000 in the other, it doesn't matter if that's 100 or 1,000 or whatever it is, because you can change it and it will be the exact same number of pixels. But if you put this too small, the pixel res, that's where you're going to run into trouble. So I've got 6,000 pixels. I think I usually work closer to 4,000, sometimes 6,000, depending upon what I'm working on. 6,000 is nice, but if it's going to be a big file, I know I'm going to be doing a lot of work on it, it's going to bog down the machine eventually. So I try not to go too crazy. But yeah, so biggest file your computer can handle, I think is the correct answer. But back to 3D, I am a huge believer that if you just explore 3D, I don't care if it's Play-Doh, if you explore 3D, you're going to start to understand things in drawing that you just could not figure out. There was this moment when I was training in school, in college, where I could draw the back view of a male character like nobody's business, and I could draw the front, all the musculature and everything. But I could not, for the life of me, figure out how those two connected on the side. And I now know, the serratus muscles and the way the lats and the obliques all kind of wrap around those forms. But at the time, that was rocket science to me. I had no idea. And it wasn't until I got into a sculpture class and started messing around and looking at and actually turning the model, turning the sculpture, and actually getting in there and learning how that stuff actually moved, that all of a sudden, it was like I went back to draw it and I just knew how it looked all of a sudden. I mean, it was like magic. It was such an eye-opening experience that I find playing around in 3D, regardless of the medium, is so advantageous to learning how to draw that it's just, I think it's like the quickest way to learn how to draw something is to just mock it up in 3D in some fashion. If you are struggling, if you have to draw 1,000 giraffes and you just can't figure out how to do it, build one out of paper. You know, it's like, it doesn't, like, you'll just all of a sudden understand how they work. It's crazy how quick, when it clicks, it's just, oh, such a nice moment. All right, so we got, so after I get a little further with these, I'm going to try a couple other different little random techniques. You guys have probably seen them. But the one that I like the most isn't something that you can illustrate. The one that I like the most, as far as what I hope for everyone, because I feel like it's the most satisfying way to come up with an idea. You know, people say draw from your life, but I want people to draw like from their immediate life, like from the thing that just happened to them that afternoon. So what I mean by that is, like, you know, if you were at the supermarket, like, just the way that the deli lady was arguing, or just, you know, indifferent to some customer, or the way that the woman was ordering her 7 bags of Swiss cheese or something like that. You know, like, there's all these really beautiful little moments, and frankly, they're like ugly moments for humanity, but they're beautiful for us because they're just chock full of really fun ideas. And you're not going to go home and draw the lady ordering 7 bags of cheese. That's boring. But it's kind of like just that feeling you got from her. That's the thing that you're starting to trying to hone in on. All right. While I thought about this, I think this little nub on the back of his leg, I'm going to put a little mini branch coming off of it to kind of like tie the horns together. So it's not just like one note. Stupid deer, they're all one note. They just have horns on their head. Not like this guy who's got it going on where there are more parts of his body. Stupid deer. All right. Yeah, that's gonna work. Blender is the next big software and can take ZBrush's spot. I'm going to argue with you about it, and I do not like to get into the conversation with Blender with anybody. And I'm just going to go ahead and say right now, let's just not have a conversation. All I'm going to say is I've been modeling for the last 25 years of my life. 25 years. Started with 3D Studio Max, moved 2 years later into Maya just because it was the software the company was using. And I'm still using Maya. I use ZBrush, I've tried Blender, I've used so many 3D programs. But there is no replacing. That doesn't happen. People use whatever they want. And that's totally cool. Whatever people make and create in, whatever makes them comfortable, whatever makes them happy to create in, that's the software to be using. There's always going to be camps. There's going to be people who fight for things. But the truth is, as long as you're happy and you're comfortable and you can create in it, that program is going to be around for a long time for you. So there's a lot of people that think that way. Maya is still around. Doesn't need to be. But I think it is a sad kind of waste of time to get caught up on a team mentality of like one's better than the other when it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you sculpt in. You can all export standardized files and bring them to the other files. Some people use tons of different, go to ZBrush to Maya to Blender, whatever, because each one has its strong point, and they'll just move from one program to the other. Happens all the time. During transition points in production, you know, like where the tools are tied in directly to one particular software, that's just what you're using. And you might get so comfortable with it, you never want to change. Enzo is asking, what kind of art do you do? Are you asking me, or are you asking someone in the chat? Maybe price is a factor. Yes, price is a factor. Yeah. I wish software was a lot less expensive. I think that's actually probably the best reason to ever switch to a program is the cost. Honestly, like I think that's better than the tool set. You know, if someone says like, "Oh, I love ZBrush. I love it," but I can't afford it, so I went to Blender. You know what? They basically just said, "I'm not going to waste my money. I just want to create, and I'm going to learn the program. That even though it wasn't my first choice, I just want to create so bad that I'm willing to just go to this other program." And it's not about the money. It's awesome. I think that is definitely the right way to be thinking. But mind you, if I'm going to speak from my vast experience again, the software that's free doesn't stay free forever. That's how they get you. I don't know. Even that's kind of too much of a blanket statement for me now that I've said it. Anything's possible. Enzo, I'm a concept artist. I been doing video games for a real long time. Ratchet and Clank series and films and things like that. And now I'm mostly doing television shows, some video games. I just went out on my own about a little over a year ago, and I'm loving it. Alright, so I'm going to make little stick feet here. Into this character. So I was talking a little bit about like the storytelling of, you know, like where to dredge up, you know, like inspiration from your just sort of like your everyday life. And you know, if you're looking at the lady at the deli counter, I think that's a really good start. If you you know, go on long walks. You know, right now is such an awesome time to just like have kind of like the world to yourself, because you can go out to a park on a Tuesday and not everyone's just filling the place. So you can go for a little hike and just like see all the animals who are so happy that humans aren't really overdoing it. You just get so much inspiration. You see little mushroom fields in the woods, or whether you're seeing, you know, old rotten logs or a falling, I don't know, we saw like an old cabin the other day when we were walking, and it just kind of like starts these little stories in your head, you know. And my wife is really used to it now. I go quiet. I think you guys are probably the same way, or you just, you know, all of a sudden like you saw something and you're off and running. You're just starting to think about things and make things up in your head, different stories. And I think what I've learned is that you have to go and find those. Like, you can't wait for them to come to you. You know, you have to be looking for them. And maybe that doesn't sound quite as magical as like having them sort of be stumbled across, but it doesn't matter. You're not in the business of finding magic. You're in the business of being inspired. And I think you have to find that in your world. And I think that's something you have to seek out. So keeping your eyes open. If you're going if you're mom or husband or wife or anybody asks you to go to the supermarket, like, that's not a bad thing. That's like them saying, like, hey, can you go get milk, and while you're at it, can you just look for ideas? You know, it's like, because you're not necessarily always going to find them in your house. Your dog can only do so many funny things before you're tired of using them as your inspiration. Stick. This guy's just about done. We'll go back to the other one. It's funny when you've drawn one side, sometimes it's harder to draw the other side, and sometimes you're just like all warmed up, and then it's like, okay, I've already drawn this one time, I can just kind of crank through it. I like those days a lot better. Alright, then we gotta just do the one leaf on the other side to make it look a little three-dimensional. I might just saying it. I don't know what it is. I gotta look it up. SCP-284. I can promise you with 100% of the doubt that I've never heard of that before. But if I just drew something that someone else created just out of the ether, that's some Matrix crap right there. So glitch in the system. All right, so that's without. Let's just do. So when I turn off the rough, it always looks a little naked to me. So I always want to just go through, make sure there isn't little things that I can add, kind of dress it, kind of like that. I'll make sure that. I'll say the funny thing, if I'm going to give some advice to budding character designers, and Enzo just kind of like, you know, gave me a little taste of it, develop a really thick skin. Get used to having bad news handed to you, and just being able to take it on the chin and not really worry about it too much. Because the beauty of being a concept artist is you're just trying to come up with ideas, you know, and that is probably the most fun thing in the world. It can be really frustrating, especially when people, you know, say, oh, you know, I think I've seen that before, or oh, is that other character? It's not frustrating. You know, that just means they're helping you out. They're saying that character looks like another character that exists. Maybe we need to try something else. That's really good. Well, I'm still going to look it up. Still got to look up this character, because if it's a good design, I got to know about it. All right, so this is SCP-2846. That's what's different about it. It's one digit north of that. Okay, so then there was this other guy down here. I'm gonna go a separate layer. All right, so we split his head. Down the middle, real creepy like. And I'm gonna do kind of like a sort of a chameleon looking eye here. They get that kind of concentric wrinkles going all around it. Almost looks like a barnacle. Yeah, Enzo, you brought it up. What is SCP? Give us the 411. What are we missing out on? Is that a video game? A comic? So one thing I like to talk a little bit about while I'm doing this stuff is I do keep my rough drawings. I keep them at a rough stage, at a rough level where I'm answering the big questions. I stop where I'm comfortable. There is no rule to when your rough is done. If you're the type of person who really wants to figure everything out all the way down to the T, that is your line. Some people can concept right out of the gate, hit that ink, just go for it. Very rarely, but you know they're out there. Those people are incredible. But that doesn't make the people who just work concepts out until they're, just almost dead, any less incredible. And I think it's good to find that line, to know what you think is a good amount of information. But I think one of the things that you're trying to answer is, how do you keep yourself involved in the piece? And if figuring the whole thing out is still exciting to you, then I say go for it. For me personally, I like to have a little bit of exploration at this stage where I'm doing the sort of ink pencil, type pencil stage. I like to still kind of find things. So I don't ever bring my roughs to any kind of completion where I don't still have the opportunity to kind of play with the forms. And that is what's enjoyable to me. And that comes with a big caveat though. When I'm working on a concept that is for a client, I don't always have the luxury of just kind of quickly knocking out a rough. If I sent them these roughs, they'd be like, I don't know, because it doesn't look anything like that. I really would have to explain how the ribs were going to work and all the eyes and these little things that I kind of found along the way. So that's important. And that's an important distinction, to know the difference between when the piece is for you or the piece is something where the client gives you a lot more freedom, then you can do different things. And that can be frustrating. That's okay. That's part of being an artist, is being frustrated 97% of the time. Oh, see, I already screwed that up. Thanks, man. We all like the drawing stuff. Just drawing whatever. Let's see. Do like a little mini jaw in here. See what that looks like. That look terrible. Jowls. Scales. Nope. See, that's weird. And gone. Underbite thing. Somehow the eye ended up having kind of like a feminine quality to it. That's kind of fun. Alright, so then right up the middle is this other leaf. I swear to God, whoever got username as their username is my favorite right now. That's amazing. Do that other leaf on the other side. Somebody tell me an exercise that they work on, that they use to kind of come up with an idea, something, you know, maybe they've heard about it, they want to talk about, like, you know, the squiggle, where you do like the random squiggle. That's my example, but I want to see if someone can come up with something I haven't heard of before. So that's really what this conversation needs to be about, is like, I need help too, so you guys need to tell me what is working for you. You know, there's this constant pull and push with clients, because I think clients typically want something safer. You know, if I showed them this creature over here that I said was like this this kind of like angelic forest creature, but I had the rib cage and ribs exposed, they probably aren't going to go for that, right? That's like mainstream. You're not going to get some job at Illumination designing their next Pets movie if you're drawing like exposed skeletons or something like that. So you have to have the ability to kind of adjust and not just be, if you're creepy, you know, oh God, I love it, but it's not for every project. All right, so Catherine says, I look at shadows in my home. That is absolutely amazing. That is a fantastic idea. Looking at shadows, it's such a nice abstract, right? Like, it's almost like watching clouds when you're a kid, which I still do. You know, I kind of get lost in it, but I haven't actually done the shadow thing. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So I'll be trying that. Alright, so Jake is saying I have my wife give me 3 descriptors and I have to create something that represents all 3. Cool. So I do something similar. I do 2, and sometimes it ends up being 3. I will say make them disproportionate. That seems to be something that works for me. So if you're doing a robot and an ice cream truck, I would say make it 70% robot, 30% ice cream truck, or vice versa. If it's split right down the middle, then I don't think anybody can. I think you run into like, which one is it? Which one is sort of like the owner of this idea? So I very much pay attention to, is this idea about the robot or is it about the ice cream truck? I love drawing vein patterns. Well, I like drawing wrinkles and vacuum too. I have all kinds of things that I just love drawing. Vein patterns, right? Alright, So what else we got here? Nick is saying Doug Shang does some cool marker squiggles and finds shapes, and yeah. So that's one that I think we could probably even do tonight. It's a game, you know. Like I think it's something that you can do with other people. You can have other people give you squiggles. You can just do a squiggle with your eyes closed. That works really well. That is such a great thing because, you know, we used to have these tiles in my bathroom growing up that was like linoleum, you know, and you have a little time on your hands and you're sitting there staring at this linoleum pattern, and it didn't look like it repeated, but then as you kind of got used to it, you could kind of see it. But then as you started to understand the pattern, you started seeing pictures in it, and you couldn't unsee them once you saw them. And I find that stuff fascinating. So yeah, doing the scribble technique, you know, all of a sudden you'll just see this face and you got it. Like you're off and running. It's such a cool technique. I like how these leaves, I was thinking of them as teeth, but they ended up kind of being like variegated. I don't know if that's the right word. You know, leaves like you see on like holly bushes and stuff. Alright, so we got Doug Shang's Sleeping Dumplings and I are in cahoots with the whole seconding the shadow thing. Skillizard is saying a lot of times I do mindless doodling and scribbling till I see something. Yeah, yep. And that works for both silhouettes as well as with just the line drawing scribbles. It works really well. Philippe's saying usually from ink spots and coffee spots. Yeah, that's a really good idea. So those are like uncontrolled shapes that you didn't generate yourself, not on purpose, and then you're kind of looking at them, so you're looking for that shape. So now let's go through a few more here. Daily objects can be fun. Yep, learning how to draw things around you. Trees are awesome. Okay, so Casper's saying he merges 3 animals with 3 random pages from an animal dictionary. Whoa, that sounds really, really hard, but that sounds very fun as well. I like that a lot. So that's like forcing yourself into kind of like a design spec in a way. That's pretty cool. So you're using a dictionary, an animal dictionary. So maybe as an addition to that, we could try like one animal and then like a Crate and Barrel or whatever, IKEA catalog, pick something out of that, and then you know, maybe like a National Geographic magazine or something like that. Like find not just 3 animals, find 3 disparate things that are interesting. I think that would probably start to take things to another level. That could be kind of cool. All right, so I think darken this up a little bit. And do the teeth on the other side. Still like the idea of the sort of plating. Kind of looks like a dragon now. Very strange dragon. She's so over me right now. She's just rolling her eyes at me. Okay, So yeah, the animal skills are how I do that every time I stare at the bathroom tiles. Yeah, I actually almost stopped myself from explaining that one because I felt like there was going to be some details in there that nobody wanted to know about. The Frank Gehry method of crumpling up a piece of paper. You know, I actually haven't tried that before. I think I know about it. Is that something that you've actually tried before? Do you find use in that? Is that something that you think? So that's the thing, is like these ideas, I think for us to actually talk about them in another way is, can we actually use these? Like if you are up against a deadline, what kinds of these ideas would you actually call on? Because there's the exploration stage where you're just trying things, and that's one mode where you can just try all kinds of, bizarre, wacky ideas. And then there's the other one where you have to call on the idea. You have to actually have something to get you started during the day because you have dailies or something like that and they want to see your work. Put a little emphasis on this eye so it has some focus. So there's an awesome Instagrammer, Nick is saying, who always makes spaceships out of daily objects. Yes, that is awesome. I don't remember which of the last one he made, but that is so incredible. That was one of those ones when I don't know if you guys saw it before, but I saw it and I was, those ideas where you're just like, I can't believe I didn't think of that, and that's awesome. That was one of those because I actually like to just kit bash and do stuff like that, and the fact that just never really crossed my mind as a concept artist for years and years, and I never did that, drives me crazy. Username says I just do small rough sketches first and find the values I want. Yep, that's more of a traditional thing, and if that works for you, you are in good shape. It's not always it's one of those things where it doesn't always, it's not always there for you. Is that the easiest way to say that? It's not always there for you. On a bad day, on a day where you're just coming up dry, that's when you need some unique techniques to really just kind of bust yourself out of that. It really does feel like you're trying to get out of prison. Close to this, feeling a bit closer to good enough. Turn the rough off. Go that line a little bit. So, Skill Lizard saying, "Oh, Casper, I love doing that." Yes, I think for a while, and I don't know if they still are cheap. They have those, is it Eyewitness books or something? They're like the white books. They're like that big, a little bigger than 9x12 or something like that. Those things, amazing reference, amazing photographs. I like those a lot. I used to buy those, and I think I still have them on my shelves. Sorry, I'm just kind of dialing this thing, and we'll move on to another idea. And then Casper says, "There's the upside down chicken, but your sketchbook on top of your head and draw I can do that now that I'm working at home. But I would have died if I saw any of the other concept artists doing that at work. Like, just tapped, man. I gotta come up with an idea by 3. You just draw something, draw an upside down chicken. You'd have to like go into like one of the meeting rooms and draw the blinds, and then just like go to town drawing chickens upside down on your head or something. A really funny thing to walk in on. Not saying it doesn't work. It sounds like it would work like a treat, but I think that'd be so funny to watch someone else doing. Alright, so this guy's telling me his feet need to be darker. There you go, buddy. Your feet are darker. Just like you asked. Alright. So let's say let's do something based on kind of like a wonky silhouette or something, right? Something that just drew on the wrong layer. Sorry, I can't help but noodle these things. Needs a little shadow. Hold on a second. Bear with me. Separate out that leg. There we go. There we go. Oh, so much nicer. It's a little drop shadow. Happy little drop shadow. Do drop shadows all night long. Alright, I won't do drop shadows all night long. Almost drew on the same layer again. Okay. So let's go into our roughs folder. What do you want to do? The squiggly line thing? Oh, let's see. Let's try something else. I wish I could actually do the shadow thing right now. That would be really cool. I also have... Okay. Adding the IKEA shapes. Yeah, I think that'd be hilarious. As soon as I thought about that, I was like, I'm doing that. I think we just got a Crate and Barrel catalog in the mail yesterday. So, or not yesterday. It had to be today. Okay, so I also have seen like artists that put kids to draw something. Yes. Oh, God, it's so charming. I wish I could draw like a little kid. I'm so jealous. They're just so fearless. They just hit ideas. It's like absolutely beautiful. Just so clear, usually. Fearless. Alright, so why don't we do... You guys want to try the squiggly line thing or the silhouette thing? First person to write one of those two, or is the next one we're going to do? There's a little delay in the chat, so when I say that stuff, it's like... In the meantime, I'm going to have my tea. I don't know how long the delay is, but... I'm going to choose one if nobody says anything. Alright, let's try working off of a silhouette. So we got these two characters sit next to each other. We have this void up here, so we've already got this like natural void. So let's say that's our general shape. So we have to invent something out of that shape. What'd you do? Silhouettes? Ah, see? We're on silhouettes anyway, so that's good. Glad I got it right. Alright, so I'm just gonna add a few random cuts. Got no idea what this is gonna be. No idea. Set myself up for failure. But I can actually carry it over here. That gives me something strange. Alright. idea. We're gonna combine silhouette and sand scrawler. And where's my Pinterest? Let's go back. Let's grab this guy. You see this plane? I gotta get me one of these planes. That's the most amazing thing in the entire world. That is a cartoon character if I've ever seen one. Ah, awesome. Alright, so yeah, we could do a bug too. It seems I think we need something techy going on. So let's use this like super sweet 80s robot TV thing. Yeah, I called it a robot before I called it a TV, because that's how I roll. Alright. So I'm going to work up a little bit of a rough. How do I get that fill lasso to delete? Okay, that's actually a good question. That's a technique thing. I'll just do that on a separate layer so you can see how it works. Okay, so it's a combination. So this lasso is the lasso fill tool. It's not the lasso tool. The lasso tool is just exactly the same as in Photoshop, where it'll make a selection. But if you go to your brush menu, there's this lasso, and you can see it's got this solid kind of fill in this top right here. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, so when you make a shape, and oh, I already have this. Okay, so when you make a shape, it fills it as soon as you drop the selection, right? So you can just add to it and add to it and add to it, whatever you need to do. So on my pen, just like I said in some of the previous streams, I map the foreground color here and this transparency color to switch when I hit the button. So right now the foreground color is red, and then there's transparency. So exactly the same way a brush works, where it will swap between the foreground color and that transparency. I believe that's in, I think that's in the preferences here. And you go, no, it's not. I know where it is. There's a actual marking menu, shortcut settings. And you go into these and you find the swap, and I think I set it to X. And it's in one of these. It's in tools. Probably do a search for it. No, it's not tools. Anyway, it's in there. And you, I set mine to X, and that swaps between these two colors. And then, so when I am working, I can hit the button on the side of my pen, which I just did. It's now transparent, and I'm making selections, but it's actually transparent ink. That's kind of the way to mentally think about it. And then you can add, but I hit the button, and then I just start adding, and I hit the button, and I'm subtracting, and you can just work really fast that way. It's designed, these kind of like selection fills are designed for people who are doing a lot of flatting in comics and things like that. But you can use it for all kinds of things. All right. So what did I say I was gonna do? A little rough drawing, some kind of robot. Oh God, I love these screens. I was watching Brazil the other night. Awesome television screens. You guys probably already knew what I was going to draw before I did. such a good piece of reference. It's got all the little, you don't even have to figure out every little bit of tech. It's kind of already walking you through them. Little tabs on the sides of the speakers. Look at that strapping that like would make like a really cool like sternocleidomastoid muscle here. So we'll use that. You get these like venting things that we can make a little trachea. Walk an antenna out the back here. I don't know if I'm up for drawing all these little holes, but we're going to try it. Just working as fast as I can. The second you start slowing down and really looking at things, you start getting worried too much. Start thinking about things that are going to be hard to draw. I think it's important to work as fast as possible to keep yourself out of that mindset. I get into it and it's debilitating. I think you have to trick yourself. Alright, so that should work for our robot. How do I get into the brush menu? Oh, so it's the subtools. I don't know why they call them tools. It's a subtool menu, and then the settings for the brushes are under this tool properties. So yeah, it's just under window. It's your subtool. You want to load those. Those are the brushes, and then the tool property window is the thing that actually lets you adjust everything. So if you hit this little wrench, you can go into here and it just has every little dial you could possibly ever want to make a brush. It's really cool. Alright, so just because I'm going to shrink that ever so slightly. Give myself a little breath between all the characters. You guys have probably seen me do this in the past, but I'm going to use the circle concentric ring tool that they have in Clip Studio. So you drop it down, you kind of set your general ellipse, and it slides across that axis, which you can use to your advantage and stuff like this. So as soon as you load it in, or as soon as you have it set, it will grab onto your brush, kind of keep you there. So that's how we're going to get going. You can see that, like, just having that influence just kind of did a lot of the heavy lifting for me. I don't really have to, now I can just have fun, find different ways to kind of put those shapes together. What's nice about this circle template, this concentric ring tool, is it's not making static, it's not making sterile lines on you. You have completely in your control the ability to still work on your line weight. It's all pressure sensitive. It's great. And then you can hit Control 2 or Control 4. Come on, work with me, buddy. Control 2. Well, anyway, yeah, it's off now. Okay, so as long as this little arc, looks like a protractor with a pencil drawing on it, as long as that's not selected, then you can leave the ruler there and it won't do anything. And as soon as you turn it back on, it will lock all your marks to that. Does the ellipse tool, Alex is asking, oh, Laura I didn't know that tool existed, and I'm drawing circles right now too. If you're doing it in Clip and you're doing it by hand, you are a god. Actually, earlier today I drew a bunch of circles by hand, and I did okay. But what was funny is I think the ellipse tool kind of warmed me up in a weird way. I don't know if that's a thing. I might just be completely making that up to justify it, but I was able to hit a few circles without having to load the ellipse tool, but I was too lazy to line up for the perspective. So, still like to give it a shot, and when I realize that I'm beat, I break out the ellipse tool. Considering it's after midnight here, I'm beat, so I'm just going to go for it. Then Alex says, does the ellipse tool work the same way on the iPad version? Yep. Yeah, I use it all the time. So I don't get the little toggles to move the special ruler ellipse around after I place the ruler. Oh, sure, I'll show you. So the nice thing is it does have undo, which I have to say, like, whoever the Japanese engineers on this program are, they've really taken into consideration what artists need. But so you can see there's diamonds. And those represent the four kind of like extreme points of the arcs of the the main and the primary axis and the secondary axis. And then there's these two little circles, and then there's a diamond in the middle and a plus. The plus is your center point. The diamond next to it literally just turns it green. When it turns green, that means it's inactive. So if you have multiple rulers down, you're going to want to be able to turn off the rulers that you're not using. Otherwise, you're going to accidentally be making marks. So turn that back on. And then the circles, they're a little too close. This is one little pet peeve of mine. You have to zoom in sometimes to get the circles to be further away from the diamonds. The circles change the rotation. They act identically. There's one on each side of the primary axis, so that will change the rotation. And then the diamonds all work the same way. They will change off of that axis, one on each side, the shape of the ellipse. So that's up to you if you want to do that. And then username is, I don't know if yours, but critiquing a forager animal. So yeah, I grabbed 5. As soon as I get this robot done, I think we can probably jump into that. We can, and kind of segues nicely into our idea of using silhouettes to come up with ideas. And I don't know if anybody wasn't here last week or didn't watch the stream. We talked about kind of have like a little challenge where we do like a forest dwelling character, and the only thing that we're going to do this week is kind of work up some silhouettes of some general ideas, and then I was going to just I screenshotted a bunch of them, and I'm going to bring them up, and hopefully I'm not here to embarrass anybody or anything like that. I just want to talk through what was working in some of them and what doesn't, and we'll just kind of and what I'm going to be presenting isn't really opinion as much as it is just from experience of kind of going through it. So we'll do that in a little bit. Casper, but how did you get the lasso fill tool and ellipse ruler inside or above your brush menu? Oh, you just drag it into the brush menu? I don't know. I haven't done it. It's been years since I set it up. But I'll find out and I'll let you know. I can't do it tonight, but I'll find out. I think it's technically a brush though. I think you can load it in as a tool. Can't be that hard if I figured it out. All right. And then Alex is saying, thanks, Greg, it helps. Yep, glad it helps. And then Nick's saying, mine were way too basic, I thought, in the end. Oh, yeah, well, Nick, if you're ever happy with your concepts, you haven't pushed them far enough. You have to push them in. It's just one of those things. You're never going to be happy. And everybody's always going to look like they know what they're doing, and you don't. That's just part of the game. That's fine. I can't tell you how many times I've posted something or put something in a meeting and I'm happy with it until the second I put it in the public folder or I post it online. All of a sudden I see everything that's wrong with it. It's like, what did I do? Hey Enzo, thanks for all the questions. Thanks for hanging out. I'm gonna post this up tonight as soon as we're done. So anybody who had to take off early or anything like that, it's no sweat. Just pick up whenever you're free. I'll be here waiting for you. I really appreciate you guys coming up. Sorry, maybe I said this already, but when I do technology, and especially when I'm doing scribe lines, I go quiet. I think I used to stick my tongue out, Michael Jordan style. I think when I was a kid, I did this whole sound effects thing too. By the time you start adding color, yeah, color reveals a lot. Actually, what's kind of funny about these is they're black and white, and I'm kind of relishing in the fact that like sometimes you start putting your fills in, your flats or whatever, you start putting your fills in, all of a sudden things just don't make sense anymore, and you thought you had it, and all of a sudden the color starts like revealing it. Sometimes the color makes things that you thought were really complicated and detailed looking look really simple. And so then you're really disappointed with the fact that you thought you had drawn something with a nice level of complication on it, and then the color just simplifies the crud out of it and takes all your fun out. I don't know. Obviously color can help a lot, but it can have some negative things going on too. Alright, so let's do our little duplicate trick. That's the nice thing about tech, is you can draw one good one. Then let's add some more. Do it again. Sometimes when I'm doing the duplicate technique, I purposely don't. I keep the lines really frail, kind of simple, and then I can just kind of duplicate, and then what I like to do is then I go back and I work on them, and it kind of, they all have the right structure because the duplication, but I can kind of give them a little bit of individuality while I build up the line weight and work on them a little bit further. I think that is a nice compromise to too much of that duplicated look. Yeah, I know a fair number of people who will just steer clear of color, but that's not always the option. Well, I hope you guys aren't going to be too mad at me, but I don't think I'm going to do that dot pattern tonight. I don't think it's going to be a lot of setup. Sorry, you're going quiet again, aren't I? Sorry. Terrible host. Start dropping in some of those shadows. I really like the way, normally I would make like this, like a piston right here, but I really like the way that strap looks, so I'm gonna create like a little bracket. Let that flow a little bit. So let's see, Schoolers are saying if the designs start to look bland or basic when I add color, I find adding patterns and whatnot to help. Yep, that's definitely, those like little internal details, whether it's pattern or whatever, that can go a long way to kind of solving some of the problems that you're running into. That's a great one. So now we start tucking some details in behind. Imagine there's some cool vacuum hoses coming up behind this. Some other hoses inside here. Nice cheap way to fill in an area. So let's finish up the face. I think I will use an ellipse tool for that. second one over here. It's his little grill mouth. So do the ticking. Oh. That action. Looks pretty 80s. Thank you, 80s television. Alright, then I think get the trachea going. And the other ribbon of rubbers over here. Am I a Bruins fan? No, I don't watch sports. I'm supposed to be a Bruins fan. If anybody from my home found that I said that, don't tell anybody. Are you a Bruins fan, Nick? You have a hockey question? Oh, okay. Well, I'm originally from Boston, so I'm supposed to be all into that stuff. I was always the weird kid who preferred to draw than watch sports, so it never happened. Alright, I'm gonna do this weird trachea thing where it has all these little plugs in here, because why not? Kind of makes it look like a processor. Well, Nick, just to be clear, I don't watch sports, but I play them. I love playing sports. At least if my buddies get together and play basketball or football or hockey or whatever, I'll play. Play all day. I just never liked watching sports. I don't know why. Just never took to it. Josh Lewis is asking, any advice for filling in gaps of mechanical stuff I always find looks overcrowded and messy? Yeah, it does. It can. My kind of mantra, and maybe I'm not even answering that, is like, large shapes surrounded by small shapes. And then if you're just filling things in like I'm doing right now, look for opportunities to every once in a while do something for a little bit of functionality. A hinge, something that people can kind of like grab onto and kind of they understand how something works. That actually causes a lot of that kind of confusion to go away when you just do kind of like a C3PO belly and you just fill it full of wires. That gets you out of a lot of trouble. But you have to realize that sometimes when people are staring at that stuff, they just see it as cobbled mess. And I think every once in a while you have to give them a break and give them something that they recognize, something that says, oh, okay, I understand that there's a pivot point here or something. So I would suggest just, in some of the substructures, trying to find something that kind of grounds them a little bit. It's your audience that's the ones that are confused. So if they know how an 80s radio works, or they know, how a certain kind of hinge in a door works, or something simple, then you can kind of reel them back in, and a lot of that confusion starts to go away. But also just shape logic. Just make sure that all your shapes aren't the same size, that you're giving breadth. You're giving small details balanced out with bigger details. Don't let it get too overwhelming one way or another. Find a way to end this form. Speaking of, I'm going to put a bunch of hoses in here to kind of fill out his neck. We'll work on his little earpiece wing. I think he does need some detail on the side of his earpiece here to kind of dress it up. Oh, and shadows help a lot. Be able to carve out a shadow of how something actually gets laid over. Even though things are starting to get complicated, a shadow will indicate what forms are laying on top of other forms. And even though that's a really tall order, shadows can be really, really complicated to figure out. It's worth trying to figure them out, because I think suddenly, as soon as you start adding shadows, you understand that depth. It's not the only trick, but it definitely works. It's a go-to for me. How do you balance work stuff and personal projects? How do you balance like 2D stuff with your 3D stuff? Any tips? I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not very good at balancing it. I'm getting better at it. Because I just want to do everything. I'm that idiot who just says like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do that. Oh yeah, give me that. I'll do that. And I just take on way too much, and I get myself into trouble. And I have to consciously write myself little notes and tell myself, you've worked this amount of time this week. Make sure you're not spending it all on the computer working. Money drives it. You don't want to be doing a personal project and posting away and then realize that, you know, on social media that your clients are waiting for their work and and you're having fun doing something else. So, you know, there's just sort of like general etiquette of not being a complete goofball. But it's a tough balance. This is this entire field is riddled with people who just don't know better. You know, it's like me. It's just, you have bad habits. You just have to draw. Drawing kind of like helps you solve your problems, and I think it makes for some really interesting arguments when you've gone a little bit too far into your own world. But I think I'm getting better at it, and like I said, I'm writing things down. I'm keeping very close track of how much time I'm spending on the computer. If I'm going to be spending a lot of time, if I know I'm going to be spending a lot of time, I'm very vocal about it. I'm very vocal about the fact that I'm going to be working on a project for a long time, or hey, I've been working on client projects for the whole month, and I really need a week where I'm just working on my own stuff, and I really want to concentrate. And I think it's, you know, it's not supposed to sound all Dr. Philly, but, you know, like having that communication that you need some time to kind of like sort through some things that have been kind of running through your head. And if there's kickback, you know, and there's people who are saying like, well, you haven't done enough in these other areas of your life. It's like that Jim Carrey movie. You just have to say yes. You say yes, okay, yes, and you know, sometimes in the back of your mind you're always thinking, oh, I'd rather be, you know, working out that problem that I created for myself. But the fact is, knowing now that I have put my time in, you know, with my family, with my kids, and doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing, I can sit down and draw on my own stuff, and I feel more relaxed. I don't feel like I'm in here on borrowed time, like I'm in here and I should be doing something else and I'm being neglectful. I can relax, and my work, it benefits from it. I actually feel like the work is actually coming out better because of it. So even though I may immediately want to be working on an idea, I know now that just putting the time in and doing the things that are important will pay dividends when you go to actually work on your own work. It's the same thing with getting paid. You know, this isn't something that I want to have a really long conversation about because it's such a tumultuous subject, but I think the key to being paid as an artist is making sure that everything is taken care of so that you don't have to concentrate on that stuff, so that you're working on your art and on creation and not on whether your bills are going to get paid or not. I think that's when you start to really understand what it means to be negotiating for your value. You know, you're not in there saying I want to be rich and famous. You know, maybe you do, but in this case, what I'm saying is, you're saying, I want my kids to be fed. I want my car payments. I want my, whatever my rent is, to be covered, so that I can do my best work. That's my goal. And then they could take advantage of you. But I don't know. If you guys aren't like me in that, I don't know. That's just how I think. Skillizard, thanks, man. I really appreciate you sticking around. Like I said, I'll post this up if you want to watch any of the other stuff. I'm gonna stick on for probably an hour or so. We're gonna do a critique pretty soon here, as soon as I wrap up this guy's head. Not a critique, kind of like, well, I don't know what it'll be. I don't know what, you guys can tell me what it became after we do it. Ash is saying, I'm novice in Clip Studio. What tool are you using to get those perfect circles? Oh, and will you reprint the bunny bot? I can reprint the bunny bot. I can add a few more if anybody's interested. Yeah. Of course I'll reprint the bunny bot. Just send me an email if you're really interested, and then to shop at Lost Bear. studios, and I'll hook you up. What was I saying before that? Oh yeah, I was answering your question. Those perfect circles, that's this concentric ring. I have all the rulers in this one palette right here, but under the special ruler there's a concentric ring. Sorry, I keep calling it a ring. Concentric circle tool, and when you drop it down, it actually locks your brush to the tool itself. So you can see right here, that's it right there. I turn that ruler on. Oh, I have multiple rulers. Hold on a second. Can make sure I'm on the right one. And so now it will just lock. So it's following that path. So it's a very, very useful tool, especially in technology stuff. You still have to understand perspective and get yourself into some really wonky trouble if you don't spend a little time just kind of like generally understanding how perspective works. It's not, it's one of those tools where it's so sexy. It just feels like it's going to do everything for you. And maybe I'm kind of adding to the problem. You still need to understand how perspective works in order for it to be successful, and that doesn't take that just takes practice. It's not going to be easy right away, but knowing where the major and minor axis go, that's it's just trial and error until you start to pay attention to the sort of like laws of perspective, and then it will start to look more believable. Sorry, I have to make some sound effects to make sure that these lines are the right shape. Alright, we're just about done. I'm just going to throw a few more little details here. So I'm going quiet again because I'm trying to get this. Doing little masses of tech is always kind of interesting to fill in. So his other wing, so be somewhere like that. If we could cheat the negative shape. Don't tell the believability police on me, but I think that looks like the other wing is back there somewhere. Alright, now the moment of truth. We turn the rough off. I'm going to dial our lines just a little bit, make sure all the line weight is nice and satisfying. Add in all our little scratches and nicks and crannies, and this guy should be in good shape. Guess I'm gonna cast that shadow on the screen. That'll make it look like it's glowing. Needs something in here though, doesn't it? Looks like one of those like dually truck front wheels. It's alright. Maybe that's where he got it. Took down an old dually. Alright, I think I'm gonna call that guy done. So what do you guys think? You guys wanna take a look at some of the silhouettes and second, I'm just trying to bring up this file. Unsupplied. Why would that be? I want to open it in Clip. I don't want to do this in Photoshop. I'm not sure why. It's giving me a hard time. Give me a second. Why? Alright, screw it. I'm just going to open up the JPEGs. Let's start with this one. Alrighty. This is by Firepower. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know what's going on, last week everybody wanted to, I said, they wanted to do a challenge where we kind of started talking about a character, and everyone was gonna take a shot at it just at the silhouette stage, and so we did this little hashtag Lost Bear challenge, and we're gonna talk about silhouettes and ways to kind of explore silhouette. And hold on a second. So that is what these are. So we're gonna just sort of like publicly kind of talk about these things. So I'm gonna go through one at a time. I don't really have any way of getting these back to anybody, not easily, and not in a way that I think I could use. Take the time to do, but I will. I just want to see what the image resolution on these are. 11. Let's double it. Let's go to 2000. Okay. Carlton, hey Greg, how you doing? I'm good. As you add the mech details, are you thinking about function or form, or are you keen on nailing a good design? I think with technology, you definitely come up with, like, you kind of become fascinated with like kinds of functionality. But the key to any good robot or spaceship or any kind of mecha that you're working on is the believability of function. So, you know, if something's gonna move and you put a bunch of kunk on it, kunk is like kind of like a made up word for just like random stuff, and it doesn't look like that actually is gonna be able to move around, like if it's a neck and it's just covered with kunk, it's not, nobody's gonna buy it, right? People understand how things move even if they're not, you know, versed in actually the actual details. So I always think about how something moves and how can I make it look like it could move. I don't care if it could actually work. I would love if I was that good, but that's not really the point. That's not the point of being at that design level. But believability is the key word. All right, so the drawing challenge was based around doing like a little forest critter, little like prey, maybe a mammal, doesn't really matter. I guess this is not a mammal. So just some little prey character, so it was kind of innocent looking. All right, Nick. So you failed. No, I'm just kidding. It's a nice range, and I'm going to talk about just kind of like generals as well, because there's some good stuff going on here. But I also just want to talk about like what this process actually is. So the silhouette process really isn't much more than doing the silhouette. So adding the eyes in, it's not the biggest deal. Adding teeth in a different color, not the biggest deal. But definitely want to keep that to a minimum. You want the silhouette to drive as much as humanly possible for that character. You can sell an entire character just the silhouette, and I think you know all the sort of like standard tropes of looking at Donald Ducks and Mickey Mouse's and Bugs Bunny's silhouette. You know them from a million miles away. It doesn't matter. It works. So that's the goal. That's what you're trying to accomplish, is how can you make that silhouette work. So and then another thing to think about is, even though you're giving a lot of variation, there's another aspect to it where you sort of, once you sort of latch on to sort of like a general idea, you start to work on variations of it as well. And I didn't talk about that, and I did that on purpose because I just kind of wanted to see the organic flow of people. But taking one idea and trying different iterations of it, different proportions, different, different groupings of details, those things are really important. So I really like this frog kind of character right here, and that's the one I'm going to start with. I think I'll do a couple for each person. All right. So like for this frog, if I were coming around to your desk and I was like, all right, where are we going to go next? I think I'll keep this kind of transparent so we can see through it. I think I would opt for, the eyes to me are the biggest read on this character. Those black eyes are telling me that those were something important. So I want to see, can we get those things really popping? And because I want those eyes to feel really, really big, I'm going to keep the body a little bit smaller to kind of balance out how big those eyes are, right? So all of a sudden, we're starting to see that the eyes are the most important thing. And then we've got all this volume here going on in the body. So now is a great opportunity to maybe make real slender legs. And to kind of balance it out, because we have those nice big slenders, maybe the toes are just ginormous. You know, like you have those big shapes at the bottom there. And I don't know what the actual shape is, but you can see now there's like a bit of a rhythm there, where you have these big shapes that are going to be the sort of like primary reads over here, these eyes, and then we create these, we got these long shapes that are trying to get away from that dense shape of that body. Sorry, I have something in my eye. And then to kind of reinforce this sort of like wing shape, I think we could probably do the same thing where get this big kind of like webby things. Oh, get that kind of like a hand there. And then maybe that hooks in there. So you can see just by where we're at now, you know, if you wanted to see the size of the eyes in there. Suddenly, you know, like you're getting a little bit more of a punch there. That would be one take on it. I think we go a lot of different ways with it. But I think it's about really focusing on the rhythm of big and large shapes. Small and big shapes, you know, and their balance and how those things flow together. You know, I think the idea is really sound. I love the sort of like bat wings. I love the like flying frog. I wish flying frogs really existed. That would be so cool. But I think just really paying attention to what is the primary. I'm going to fill this back in because I like to leave those as silhouettes. But what is the primary? The eyes, you know, those big eyes that it has. Like this rodent down here, this thing with the buck teeth. You know, I'm seeing. I like the hunch. I love the hunch. I like. Kind of reminds me of like some like Boston construction worker, angry old man kind of thing. Hey Josh, thanks for coming out, man. Well, Nick, it's not. I don't want to ever call something better. It's just a different way of looking at it. And I think that there are even, you know, if we were exploring more silhouettes, we'd probably find that we take this and we keep refining it. So it's like, you know, how can we keep pushing that? So you're kind of telling me the story. You're saying he's got this like hunched over look, and he's got these like buck teeth. So what I'm thinking is, if I'm looking at the silhouette and I really want to go nuts on it, let's go for it. Let's go big, right? And let's make his head kind of small. You know, he's gonna have these huge teeth, so let's make his head really small. And then big teeth. And I'll have to figure out a way to make that read a little bit more clearly. Hold on. So these little, see if we can get these teeth to look. Actually, he has sharp teeth, didn't he? So if he had like fangs. And then his little tiny tail. You know, we're playing with the balance again, where we have thick, nice big shapes. Whoop. Almost went to the wrong area. Okay. And I like those spines on his back. You don't want them to be too competitive with that all the stuff that's going on in the front there. So maybe we'll just let them emerge slowly up off the back here, and then just really kind of go for them. And then let them disappear. And then reverse that shape. I mean, go for it. Just, it's big. He's got it. He's got something to talk about. This big shape. You see what I mean? Like, just taking what's important about your design and really pushing it, you know. And I think really making his eye small, you know. If I were gonna draw through this silhouette, you know, I might imagine, that wasn't bad actually, that he has like this great big nose, his ears, these gigantic teeth, you know. Just, I think that could be, you know, like, it's just really think about like, and a lot of times artists like us, we do these kind of silhouettes, and we don't ever show them the first vibe, you know, like those first drawings, those are like us just to kind of get the anatomies down, you know. I think that's an important step, is just to figure out what it is about the personality of that character that we want to get, and then we find ways to push it. So I'm kind of taking the easier step. You did all the heavy lifting. Okay, so that's how I would approach those two. So I'm going to move on to another one. Let's see, we had this one. I'll crop these. Crop. And so the only real failure here is just that you really want to see the silhouette filled in. Do we have Rabbits in Nightmare here tonight? Anybody? I'm gonna work on it anyway, just for a few minutes. But if you're there, let me know. If you don't want me to know, whatever, that's fine too. So I think the balance between thicks and thins on these is really fun. They got this like bird shape here, this cool thing with like these danglies, but I do want to see them filled in, I think, you know. And I'm just gonna fill two in real quick, just to kind of show everyone like what that silhouette could look like if it was actually not just contour. Oh, are you username? Rabbit Nightmares and username. You got the best names, man. Or I just said man, I don't know. But anyway, best names. Love it. Alright, so I'm going to fill this one in because I really like this one. So the silhouette, the reason the actual silhouette exists isn't like, and not as a contour, is because it, you know, like if you see something on the horizon like a horse or a bird or something like that, and you see the silhouette of them backlit, you know, your brain is designed to fill that stuff in, and you can, on some sort of like primordial level, you're able to like assume a lot about that character. And it doesn't work the same way with a line. And I think the reason is line isn't a real thing. You know, like a line is an abstract concept that humans made up, and our brains just haven't caught up with that yet. But I mean, just look at that silhouette. All of a sudden, it's just like, you know, those dangly bits underneath the chin, everything like that. It's already kind of fun. Carlos is saying, do you ever worry that the silhouette might be too specific and it is maybe should be more generic, or is it fine to go a bit with the details at that stage? I think that's a bit of a personal preference. You know, if you're confident with your details, you know, it's who you're answering to. If you're answering to yourself, you know, like maybe it's not such a big deal because you are able to see it clearly. If you have a really great art director or whoever is working on your project and they can see it and they like the details, go for it. But if you need to kind of walk someone through simple, you know, basic shapes and to the silhouette shapes, the basic shapes and then to the more detailed shapes in sort of stages, then that's just something you're going to have to adjust for. I think there's sort of an argument for both. I don't think it's a personal preference thing as much as like who your silhouettes are kind of like, hey, this is an idea I had, whether you're talking to yourself, which is fine in this case, or you're talking to a team. The silhouette is just like, you can see how quick I'm knocking these things in. It's just like, hey, what about something like this? And everybody sits down and says, yeah, okay, I can see where you're coming with that. And you have to gauge it against your team and what they're able to actually see. All right. So you can see just in these silhouettes, just the clarity. Like this one, I think this one on the bottom here has a really fun level of clarity where a lot of the finer details are up top, and then the creature is down below. And I actually love it. I think it's a really fun design. I don't know why I'm whiting that out. I think there's some really fun balances. I like the callback to the tail, to the ear shaped on the tail, and I like this kind of like big body thing. So I think this is a really successful design. It's got a lot of personality, how it kind of like looks like it's laying flat on the ground. That's really strong, you know, like that big body balanced with those little tiny feet and the little tiny head, and then those spires coming out is really great. Now this one up here, this silhouette, even though I think is really charming, is a tough silhouette to understand, even though I love the dangly bits. But I think what I would have probably assumed we would see more is something more from the side, maybe just a little bit more from the side, where you see those legs kicked out, and so I can get a better idea of the shapes. And I think that's really important with the silhouettes, is to make sure that what you're giving the person, it's not going to be the final pose. This definitely could be a final pose at the top here that you gave. I think that could be a really fun pose, but we're not going to be drawing necessarily the final pose from the silhouette. The silhouette is just literally a quick idea to say like, hey, what do you guys think of this? Something like this. Let's get this horn. I know I'm putting the horns all in wrong places, but I just want to kind of like make a point that, you know, like by doing, let's make his arm come out. You know, just by putting it in a bit more of a readable silhouette form, you know, like from the side. It doesn't necessarily have to be like straight side. We could indicate that there's like some sort of like 3/4 action going on. But it just, you know, like everybody kind of looks at it and understands the way the form works. So, does that make sense? What do you think of that username? So Ash is asking, do you have a set amount of iterations in mind when you're working to start a creature? No. No. As far as I'm concerned, there is no way to measure this stuff. If it takes you 1,000 iterations or if it takes you 1 iteration, it's when you are happy with the design. And if you're not happy with it, you just gotta keep working on it. There isn't some mathematical equation being like, okay, if I do 5 iterations, it's gonna be done. No, it just isn't happening. All right. Night Kulfi's not happy with us. Oh well. Sorry, bud. All right. Next one. Well, before I bring up the next one, username, do you have anything you want to add? Is it something I did that you don't agree with, or anything you want me to change? Okay, good. Alright, well, let's bring up another one. So this person posted them all on different sheets. So I'm going to bring them up. So I'm going to pick two, and I'm going to talk about the sort of differences, because I think two were working really well, and two are okay. Okay, so this Sleepy Dumpling, I already know. It's around. So, one second to make sure my folders are in the right place here, because something's going wonky with them. There we go. Alright. Live streams. Alright, Sleeping Dumplings. Another awesome name. So, this one, even though like I feel like I'm looking at this thing and I'm seeing like some crazy cool like deep sea fish or something like that, I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is. And if the criteria was literally I just want to do this sort of like amorphous kind of sea cucumber kind of creature, this is a really beautiful silhouette, and I actually love the kind of like fin shapes, and I can imagine this thing kind of slinking around and being all creepy and gross. But I think to sell it, we probably need to get a bit more clear of a read as to what that character is actually probably going to look like. And I'm going to kind of pull out this sort of like side view thing again, where I'm not going to go straight side view, but I'm going to imagine it's sort of like a slug shape. And if I'm wrong, it's not really about if I'm getting it right, even though that's maybe me making an excuse. But I do want to kind of like illustrate like how you could take this form and just kind of like play with it a little bit to kind of get some clearer conversation going with whoever you're trying to show it to. So if the fins and everything were kind of, so it has kind of like this beached whale kind of quality to it. What else you got going on? Yeah, you got like all kinds of cool little extra fins going on. So now I am kind of playing off the whole like beached whale, beached seal type of thing, but like you can imagine this thing like sitting on the beach and just getting real upset at you, or sitting on a rock and just making all kinds of gross noises or something like that. So I would just kind of like play with, like some of the silhouette shapes and just kind of make them a little bit like think about the position that they're sitting in. So that would be that. But this one, I don't know. I know you added the eyes in, and it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's not a cheat. I really like it. I think there's something like I would love to see this creature sitting around in like Dagobah or something like that. So rather than just trying to figure out like another position for this, this is where now it's time to start playing with the proportions, right? So I think we have a lot of equal size things, like the toes are all kind of the same size as the eyes. You do have this nice balance with this like, the head being like a nice big plump. But so then it's like, even like the indication of these little neck wrinkles is really great. So if I'm gonna just push it, it's like let's push it. Yeah, the silhouette poses are hard. They are hard. And I think the takeaway that maybe you guys can see happening is you don't have to get it the first time, but working quickly allows you to not get kind of precious. So you get your idea down, and then you can kind of go back and put it in a different position. I didn't have to work very hard because you already did all the hard work. And then, like I'm going to keep the eyes way up here. How did you have those? Yeah. So I'm going to keep the eyes way up here. And then push the feet down even further and kind of maybe kick the tail up just so it's clear. Right? So just by kind of like taking what you had and then just sort of pushing those proportions. I'm gonna shrink this one. Kind of looking at the side by side, it just kind of like takes all the kind of like landmarks that you've already established and it starts to like focus in and make things feel more important. And like those eyes are so prominent, by like put them up on a pedestal, like let that giant bulbous head support those really interesting three eyes. I think that could be really cool. So that would be my input for that. What have you say to that, Dumpling? Or anybody else? Anybody has input? All right. Well, I'm gonna bring up the next one. But if Dumpling, if you have anything you want me to answer or talk about more about this one, I'll just pop it back up. All right. So the next one that I grabbed was this one. This is from Jake. So let's crop that out. Cool. Cool. Alright, Jake cheated a little because he's got lots of internal details. But we'll fix that. So just to kind of level the playing field a little bit, I'm going to knock in your silhouette. Do as much as I can to give it all the justice it deserves. I'm a huge fan of like bunny characters, obviously. I don't know if anybody's been able to pick up on that. But I like this kind of bunny with a sort of lizard tail here. So I think the only real downside is that you cheated. You did the internal details, which is fine. And that there's only one iteration on it, and I think so. I don't know how long it took me to just knock that silhouette in, because I think you could probably double that time for the time it takes to sort of explore it and kind of find something. But that's the silhouette that we're working with. If we're being yeah, I know the transparent brush. But I think it's your own work. Like I'm just being like kind of a like a bit tough on it just because like I can. Nobody can yell at me right now, so no. The silhouette is more. It's for you. It's like, is the silhouette clear? And I'll give you a perfect example of even though like everyone uses like the Mickey Mouse idea and everything, like get your mascots having that clear silhouette. Where silhouette was paramount for all the Ratchet and Clank games that I worked on was when you saw enemies in the background running at you and they were only like half a centimeter tall on the screen, you still needed to know who and what that character was going to do to you. If it was a new enemy, you needed to know that that thing was bad or good or had guns or swords or whatever. The silhouette was crucial. And a lot of times in games or in films, a lot of the characters read at a very, very small scale. So to nail that silhouette is number one priority. Adding the internal details, that's when it kind of gets closer to you, and adding the really juicy details is when it's like right up close to you. Now, a character may have different uses. It may only, in a particular project, only be close to you. Well, then I would argue that the silhouette isn't always as important as some of those internal details. But I think it's fair to say that the silhouette is always going to carry a lot of the heavy lifting. So, with this bunny character that we know has gigantic eyes, I'm going to shove this guy off into the corner as kind of our, this is our, where we're at. And then let's see if we can't boost it a little. So let's go this big with the head that you have. Let's say we do have a head that big. But because you have those giant eyes, we want the head to kind of support those giant eyes. So let's go real small with the body. And maybe the feet. And I'm just riffing, I know that there's a lot of options that we can probably try out. A little heroic chest maybe. And then what's nice about having a small body is then that tail is just going to be so much more impressive as it kind of slinks around. And then we'll get those ears. And I think, again, we can start off kind of small. This is what I would do. And then I would just kind of just go for them. So just playing with those proportions and just figuring out what is the primary. If the eyes are just as big as this, like if they're they're night vision goggle size bunnies or something, bunny eyes. Maybe that's how big they need to be. Maybe his cheeks like Bugs Bunny. I don't know, but that would be one take on this that I think could be kind of fun, is like playing up those proportions, getting that silhouette to read a little bit better. Cool. All right, and I think we have one more person. Yes, we do. Casper. All right, Casper cheated in a big way, but he was trying to keep that silhouette going. So this is cat. Oh, I cut off your name. Let me do that the correct way so that you're copable. Okay. All right. Everybody follow. Anybody that I have up, you guys should be going and following and stuff like that. So, Casper, are you there? You still there? I know it's morning time for you, but I don't know if you're off at a job already or something. But these are some pretty fun shapes. A lot of the kind of like forms and shapes that I like to draw. I thought we were supposed to do 3 colors. No, I wasn't clear. I just said silhouettes, and then I just wanted to see what you guys did, and you did it. You did whatever you did. And again, there is no hard fast rule, and I don't want to like make it sound like there's hard fast rule. I think the closest I'm gonna say to a hard fast rule with silhouette is being able to work quickly, being able to put a lot of them out and not become precious about them, being able to work in a way where you're willing to try out so many things, and if people just keep saying no, that's not working for me, it doesn't matter. It took you just seconds to just try these things out. And I know that's not a realistic time expectation. It probably took you, a couple hours to put these together, and that's as long as the silhouettes would take. But it's about not putting so much effort into them. It's putting more effort into the idea than it is in the execution of putting the forms down. Does that make sense? So, I love this one. This one, it harkens back to a lot of the stuff that I like to draw. But what I'm in love with is this top left one here, where the nose is overlapping the scale of the mouth, and so I just want to focus on that one. I think it's a really fun design, and what I would do at this stage is, if like people were starting to gravitate towards this one, is how do we kind of like start using that shape to emphasize those ideas. So just like with that rodent one that we did earlier, I think getting that back up and forcing the face down. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So if we get the eyes down closer, you can see you're gonna have those 4 eye things, and then the nose. I'm gonna cheat with you here for a second, because I think the nose is hilarious. Get that nose really smushed in there, and that way the teeth, like maybe there doesn't need to be so many teeth. Maybe it's that the teeth, they're more like tusks, and you can imagine the tusks kind of doing this action, and then there's just smaller ones. But if I were going to do this as a silhouette, I think I would probably focus a little bit more sidewards, so that the idea is a little clearer. And then we can start to think about like how those sort of like leaf pattern shapes work on the back. He has a crazy long tail, right? So but by kind of giving like, and this is why the 3/4 silhouette rarely works, is it's much more about what big details are going to be breaking that silhouette the most. And I think a lot of times the side view, or close to side view, is actually going to work a little bit better. I don't like the way the angle of that teeth is. So we'll imagine like the nose is like down here, and the tooth, maybe some of the smaller teeth are plunging up here. Maybe compress those eyes even more, like really get that compression going towards the front. fantastic character. Really fun. Love the overlapping nose and teeth of that 3/4 angle. But I think in the silhouette stage, when you're selling it at that stage, you kind of have to like just kind of like get some general ideas down. Really, really beautiful stuff. I think you got one other page here. I'll do 2 for everyone. Yeah. So I liked the kind of like giant eyes on these as well. So I don't know. I think in the silhouette stage, we're not going to know the difference between those two types of noses, the sort of bat nose and the sort of like typical kind of like wide bear rodent nose. But what I like is these giant ears and these sort of like egg-shaped eyes that are like protruding out the top. So I think that's what we could focus on. And I think by looking at the silhouette, and playing with that, pushing that shape, it's such a fun shape that you got going on, and maybe having the eyes bug out. I actually like the kind of compact nose. It's really nice. And then let's get those ears protruding out the silhouette. And I think you could take this kind of like side view silhouette stuff and try, different proportions where maybe the eyes are back further, that the ears are, maybe a bit more like going with speed type of thing. The nose is a bit more prominent there. Maybe the teeth are really big. Maybe we try one where the teeth are more like serration, like different ways of treating that underjaw, and then playing with that tail again, which is a really nice way to end a big kind of plump form. Yeah, that's why I was saying maybe it needs less teeth. If you're gonna, if I'm art directing this thing, I'm saying like I love the vibe of it. Maybe it's like for instance, if we were moving forward with a design, and this was like a little tiny critter, maybe it's like, okay, you have these beautiful kind of like egg-shaped eyes. Maybe it makes sense to do this tooth and these teeth, just a little same vibe, but just simplify them a little bit, and then that way you're getting the same exact like vibe from the character, but you don't have as much clarity issue when you zoom out. It's just kind of like it almost becomes the same size details, but because the character is small, it starts to. And I love the scale of these ears, but I think I want them to constantly be breaking the silhouette, so I would go even bigger with them. Personal preference. Really fun shapes. And then, maybe these things don't need to be quite so big, because you're trying to balance them against the size of the ears. So either the ears need to be small and those things need to be large so that they don't compete, or vice versa. And then they can feed out. And I think one thing I noticed is like you carried these like leaf patterns all the way down. I think you can let them die and then have the one big leaf at the end, so they're prominent, and then they kind of dissipate, and then there's a rest, and then it's the big leaf. Like having those little rest moments, those like little like 1/3, 2/3 rules is always really fun. Give me some feedback, Casper. What do you think of that? Nobody likes critiques. I'm waiting. Sip tea while I wait for the chat to catch up. I'm just going to jump back and sketch on my stuff while I'm waiting for everybody. Good. It was a fun project. I think you guys came up with a good one. Alright, well, it's 1:51 for me. I'm going to hang out for 9 more minutes, and then I think I'm going to call it for the night. Is that cool with you guys? Anybody have questions? Anybody... Good. I'm glad that was a cool thing to do tonight. I think that was really smart. And I don't think we're gonna do a challenge every single Monday. I actually got a little bit nervous about it myself, but I think we should keep doing challenges though. I think we should probably do them like every 2 weeks or something like that. You know, I think if you guys would be up for it, I'd like to actually kind of like stick with the same character and go through some iterations where we start bringing it to the internal details and start refining it. And people who, you know, didn't jump in right away, they can just pick up wherever they want and just start working or help with the critiques and things like that. Yeah, I'll say, you know, I don't mean to ever give advice like I'm some like seasoned old man or something like that, but one of the most eye-opening and kind of freeing moments was when I was able to let people just go to town on my drawings and work on them and give me critiques, and I didn't feel heartbroken anymore. Because at the end of the day, if you're asking for help and it's someone that you trust or you think that, you know, it is able to offer you some good advice, it's saving you so much more of that heartbreak down the line. So I always just cherished that moment where I really felt like I didn't mind having people kind of tear me a new one about my work, when it just meant that later I was going to be making less screwed up pieces. Good. I'm glad you guys are getting something out of the feedback. That was fun. This thing needs some like webs or something in between it. Yeah, you can develop a character. I think that'd be super fun. You know, and then if it goes well, we'll just like develop like something that eats it or something like that. You know, like there's like that, because then you have something to play off of. You have a story that you're trying to tell. You know, a little Tom and Jerry action where you know, like all this tension between two different species or something like that. I think it would be really fun. But let's just concentrate on the first one for now. And I think that's going to inform a lot of what we could do with whatever's next. This is looking sufficiently gross. Awesome. Alright, so I'm gonna draw for just a couple more minutes, and then I'll bail on you guys and we'll get together next Monday. So next Monday, what are we talking about next Monday? Oh, my light bulb just died. Cool. Oh, darkness. A little underlighting going on? Huh? Sure. Yeah, we gotta sort out some of the details. I'll keep doing some research and figure out like what the best way to put all this stuff in the same spot is. Okay, now I'm lit again. Alright. Some ghost in my house telling me to go to bed. Alright. No, I know. But Nick, if I can come up with something like a bit more of an organization for this, I'll do it in a heartbeat. I think all of us are trying to, juggling day life and deadlines and things like that. But if I could find some easy way for us to all jam together and communicate back and forth really easily, I'll do it. But for now, we'll just do it the hard way, because that is part of being an artist. Cool. Alright guys, I'm going to get going in about 2 minutes, but I really appreciate everyone coming out, and it's really fun for me. It's fun to draw with you guys. It's fun to feel like I'm with other people that care about this stuff. It's awesome. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody taking on the challenge. I know that's takes a lot of sort of gusto to say like, all right, I'm gonna make this so that everyone can see it. I really appreciate it. It's really fun. Thanks, username. Thanks, Nick, Casper, everybody. I sleep in dumplings. Really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys come out next week. You guys are becoming my new Monday friends. We'll just hang out together until all this chaos calms down, and then we'll get together for real someday. Cool. Alright guys, with these little floating podules, nuptials, I don't know what these are, thingy-mabobbers floating away from his face, I will call it. You guys have an awesome week. Work your tails off. Looking forward to seeing you guys on Monday.